Welcome to the Her Sunday Best podcast. I'm Dallas, and I have a guest with me today. This is Mara. And this is a space where women are welcome to come as they are, messy, growing, healing, and learning to walk confidently in Jesus. Here we talk about real life, real faith, and building a life that reflects Christ in our friendships, our homes, our purpose, and our calling. You're not here by accident. You're a part of our sisterhood. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Her Sunday Best podcast. I'm Dallas, and I have our very first podcast guest. This is Mara.
Hi.
And Mara, how old are you again?
I'll be 25 on March 1st.
Okay. All right. So almost 25. And I met Mara many moons ago. I did some of your senior pictures.
Yep.
There was one session. I knew of you already. But I don't know how, but I knew it pretty same school.
Yeah.
Small town. But then when my son was born, when he was a baby, I hired Mara as our babysitter. Little did I know that she would become like family to us.
Yes.
And I remember I just told somebody this the other day. I told somebody, I was like, I hired Mara as like our very first sitter for Retley. That was not family. Mm-hmm. And I remember Dylan and I went on a date. And you were texting me, and you're like, I can't get him to stop crying. Yes. So we tried to, like, wrap up our date. And I remember telling you, like, take him outside. Because he loved to be outside as a baby. And then I remember, like, a couple months later, I put back on Facebook that I was, like, looking for a date night babysitter. And you messaged me. You're like, am I fired? Like, did I not do good?
I did.
I was like, no, I just thought I scared you away.
Nope.
with the crying baby. So, and she's not so much our babysitter anymore because my kids are older now, and now you have a baby of your own.
I do.
But she's still a huge part of our lives. I consider her like a little sister, and we got to be there for her wedding, and my kids were in your wedding.
Yeah.
So lots of fun times over the years, and it's been a beautiful year or so just watching you just blossom even more as you enter motherhood. And I know that was a scary time for you to enter motherhood, not only as you were preparing, but also then with your labor and delivery story. Mm. And we will talk about all of that when we get to that in the episode. But it's just been so fun to just watch you as a human. And I'm not saying that for podcast purposes. I'm saying that in general, and I know I don't tell you that enough, but super proud of the woman that you have become and watching you over the years and just watching your seasons of life. And I know there have been times where Dylan and I were like, oh, Mara. And then there are
Get on track. Come on.
I'm just like, what are we going to do with this one? And you were kind of like a child of our own, but just so much older. We're like, what do we sit down?
Yep.
What's our boundary line? But Dylan and I talk all the time, just like how proud we are of you and the strides. Like you've been doing all the things and now in motherhood, and you're just doing an amazing job. So Mara is going to be on today. She's going to talk about kind of her lifestyle growing up in a church and moving in and out of churches and coming back, full time into a church, which includes your labor and delivery story as well. And that is part of your faith journey. And I think that is really relevant for a lot of moms, regardless if they had a hard labor and delivery. I think becoming a mother, you understand parenthood and that kind of extreme amount of love for somebody. Like, we love our spouses, but the love that you have for your child is so different.
Oh, it is.
And I think it helps us reflect, like, God's love for us because we are his children. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of women find themselves after they actually have children, either coming back to their faith or exploring their faith because they have a better understanding of what that is like. And I do that all the time when my kids say something to me and I say something back to them. I'm like, I feel like that was God talking to me, like, because I am his child, and I feel like I tell you these things, like, don't worry, it's fine. Like, it'll be fine. Like, this is not the end of the world. And I feel all the time. And my kids humble me for sure. but
I think they humble everyone.
Kids are fun. They're fun. So this episode, I don't know that we titled this episode. We'll title it.
Yeah.
What any specific things you want to title this episode as?
I don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll play with
it goes.
No title for now. We'll get to a title at the end and see how that all plays out. But I move my mic real quick because it is like kind of in my face. There we go. Okay, so go ahead and tell me who you are to start.
Okay, so obviously I'm Mara. I'm married to my husband Dalton. We kind of have an untraditional love story. We actually met through Tinder, but we lived 30 minutes apart our whole life. He graduated from another school in our county. I just never knew who he was. We had our baby boy in October, and his name is Bodie. I used to be a hairstylist. I'm actually licensed still to do hair. I just took a step back, and I have an in-home daycare now. So I watch other people's children in my house. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Perfect. And I think, honestly, this is nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
But I think that's so true. Like, we see all the time, I think a lot of women and people in society give a lot of new moms, like, a lot of gripe when it comes to leaving your job
Yes.
when you have kids.
Yes.
Like, you're supposed to be working.
Yep.
And all these. And I just saw somebody make a post about it on Facebook yesterday. It was like, will you guys stop trying to make content creation a job? Will you stop trying to do all these work from home jobs and go get a job? And I said, and I know that this person does not have children.
Oh, it changes.
And I'm like, yeah, but that's not the same when you have children, because living in a world that we live in, daycare is hard, and it's hard to trust people, but like, you don't want to miss on the milestones.
Yes.
Working from home, and right now I'm doing like 1 million work from home jobs because.
Yes. Well, that was a big thing with opening a daycare. Like, I wanted people to have a safe place to send their child.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, I've babysat since I was 13. Like, I have a huge family, tons of nieces and nephews. So babysitting is my life. Like, and a lot of it started when my niece was born, and I started keeping her a couple days a week. And then it kind of eventually became, well, we knew we wanted to start our family. So I was like, I don't want to send my child somewhere. And my parents work full time. I mean, there was no, like, my mom can't stay home with my kid. And so we talked, and I was like, what if I did babysitting in the house? And my husband was like, I think that's a great idea. And so I started before we got pregnant. And it's been great. Like, I get to stay home with Bodie, and I don't have to miss anything with him. But yeah, I also get to help other parents have a safe place to send their kids.
Yep. That's so important, because
Yes.
there are so many awful daycare stories.
Oh, so many.
Trying to find somebody. So it's awesome for you to open that
Yeah.
for moms who struggle with that, because I struggle with that. I always trust my kids with you, but I don't trust them with a lot of other people.
Yes.
So
It's hard, especially when they can't talk. That's where I just wanted to be that place for parents, because I get it. A lot of parents don't want to send their kids to a babysitter until their kid can talk and tell them what's going on. And I totally get it. I mean, totally understand it. And I wanted to be that safe place for infants. You know, I have a huge love for babies. Also have a huge love for any kid, but especially babies. Like, they got my heart. And so yeah, that's why I did it.
And that's awesome. My calling is definitely not children. I love my own children.
Right?
I love my own children, but other people's children.
I'm told that a lot by people. They're like, I don't know how you do what you do.
I don't know how you do it.
Like,
Not that I'd ever like hurt a kid, but
Yeah.
also like the thought is, I'm just like, will you just not talk for 3 seconds?
yes, that's a tough part.
And I see that with a lot of people. They're like,
Yes.
love my own kids,
Yep.
can't do other people's kids.
Nope.
So it's amazing that you do that. That you have the calling to take care of little
Yes.
babies too.
Love it.
So go ahead, start wherever you feel like you want to start,
Okay.
as far as your faith journey and
Okay.
what that looks like.
Yeah. So let's just start from the beginning. My mom attended the Methodist Church. She was a member of the Methodist Church from before I was born. And she started taking me when I was little. And so I grew up in the Methodist Church. My dad didn't start attending with us until I was closer to 3, 4-ish. So my mom would always take me by herself. And, you know, that's where I was raised. And I was in the Methodist Church until 7th grade. I had a lot of, I loved our pastor. I grew up with him. He's actually the one who did our wedding. Like, he is my childhood pastor. He's very good friends with my parents. Everything. My dad was on the praise team at our church.
Did your dad sing?
No, my dad plays
Oh.
the drums.
Okay.
No, he does not sing.
Trying to picture your dad singing, and I'm like,
No. But my dad played the drums for our praise team. And it was great. You know, we made a lot of friends. There was a group of us that all of our parents had kids the same age. So we all were kind of like close. That was really nice. around 6th grade, and I don't really remember a lot from like my childhood. It was fun to go to church. Like I looked forward to it every Sunday. You know, I used to be that one that would like dress up my baby dolls and I would take them to church with me. I had like a major obsession with the American Girl dolls, so I would always like make sure they were in their Sunday best, you know. And
I love it.
I would take them to church with me, and that was what I did. And then in 6th grade, my childhood pastor decided to retire, and that was, you know, great for them. You know, they wanted to focus on their family and everything. Awesome. They brought in a pastor who was supposed to turn our youth program around, continue to, you know, make our youth program better. So I had decided to go through confirmation, which is kind of like just you're confirming your faith. You want to stay in the Methodist church, you know, kind of thing. So it's a 6-week course that you do, and at the end of the course, you're like confirmed in the Methodist church, but you're not a member yet because you can't join until you're older. And so I was going through confirmation, and a couple friends of mine and I, there were some comments made by this pastor, and they were not appropriate at all. And I remember my mom found out, and my mom was livid, and she was like, no, this is not okay, you know, all this stuff. She ended up writing to, you know, a board about it. He was removed from our church. He left, and he went somewhere else. I'm not sure whatever happened. I don't know where he is today. I don't really keep tabs because it was very awkward. And then they brought in another pastor, and he was younger. I mean, like early 20s, I would say, when he came into the church. And he was a youth pastor before he was a actual like congregation pastor. And he was going to make this youth program great, you know. So this is the second pastor that was going to make this youth program just like take off. Everyone was excited, you know, it was going to be this great thing. You know, we had this youth pastor that was young. He was like ready to go. And around this time, I was like a freshman in high school, I would say. I was a freshman. And everything was good at first, you know, not really a lot of issues. You know, the youth program wasn't quite taking off, but it takes time. So, you know, no one really thought anything of it. Sophomore year, a girl at our school was in a very tragic car accident and passed away. And during this time, my parents opened their house to any kids that wanted to come and, you know, hang out. And my parents didn't have a big house. I mean, it was a small house, but there were kids at our house all the time during this, you know, time. And kids were staying the night. Like, my parents were setting up rooms. Like, you know, girls stayed on one floor, boys stayed on another floor, you know. And then it got to the point where they were like, okay, boys have to leave at this time, you know, girls get to stay, you know, type of thing. And that was probably a week straight that my parents just had kids every night at their house. And this was like a great moment for this pastor to, you know, really foster that relationship with kids.
As they're grieving and
Yes.
questioning, especially in times of loss. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're
but
fine. Yes.
in times of loss and questioning, especially when it's something tragic.
Yes.
And because I know who you're talking about.
Yes.
And I remember even myself as an adult, at this point, young adult, but like just being like, why do awful things happen to the
Yep.
best of people?
Yes.
Like, I remember this girl in high school, she was just the sweetest human.
Yep.
And so like this would have been a really good opportunity for these grieving children who not only just grieving a loss, but also then, you know, this is a great time to question faith.
Yes.
And how, you know, what that means, like when it comes to God.
Because you've got confused kids. And
yeah, especially when they're kids and if they're not in a church.
Yes.
And it really can just do a work on a kid for sure. And I remember seeing a lot of the kids just very distraught over this. I attended the funeral, and it was so sad, and it was so heartbreaking. And I mean, I was an adult, and in my time of life, I was working CPS, still very fresh in my own faith journey. So like, I didn't even know.
Yeah.
So let alone for kids who had no knowledge when it comes to, you know, or very little knowledge when it comes to faith and God and tragedy, for that to happen. So.
And, you know, my mom was trying the best she could but my mom, she's not a pastor. You know, my dad's not a pastor. They were trying to do the best they could, but there's a lot of questions that arise when something like that happens. And, you know, this was a great opportunity for this pastor to really take off this youth program. And he chose not to reach out to anyone. And that was kind of when I took a step back from church altogether. shortly after that, my parents kind of stopped going as well. My dad was going more than my mom and I because he was still on the praise team. And so he was still, playing the drums every week type of thing. And then the praise team also started to kind of leave. And everyone just started to go different ways. It just wasn't a good fit for anyone anymore. And this pastor eventually did leave. They moved somewhere out of state and whatever. But so they did leave, which, I think they just wanted to keep going with their family and, stuff, which is fine. They brought in a couple other interim pastors during that time. We gave them a shot. It wasn't anything that we liked, and at this point we went from a church that had numbers in the high hundreds and 200s every Sunday to a church that had 20 people sitting in the pews. So who you have preaching truly matters.
True difference.
It makes an impact on people, and I've watched it firsthand.
Yep.
So by this point, we took a break for a while. We didn't really go to church for a couple months. We, would watch some services online, type of thing. And then we started going to a church in Marysville. And it was a Methodist church as well, because we thought we wanted to stay in the Methodist because we were members of the Methodist church. So we wanted to stay with the Methodist. And so we, left and we went to Marysville. We went there for a couple weeks. This church was huge. When I tell you 300 to 500 people are attending each service and there's 3 services, it felt like a mega church.
Wow.
And I did not see myself getting involved in a youth program there because it was it kind of felt like if you didn't start as a child in this place, it was really hard to come into it. And by this point, I'm 17, I'm almost 18, I'm getting ready to go to college, and I'm just kind of I wasn't into it. I was I don't need to be a part of this. So I didn't have a good, youth program ever that I was involved in. And so we kind of stopped going there as well, because it just wasn't a good fit for us. And that's when we found New Hope. And they were at the theater again I think this was the second time they had been to the theater. And we started going there, and, I really loved it at first. I was wow, I really feel, that I'm here. And my parents, were going, and at this point I was a senior. And so they were going, and I was going, and, we were going every Sunday. It was great. And then I graduated, and I left for college. And I went to Kent State up in Cleveland. So, going to church every Sunday as a college kid, you don't really think about it, especially if you're not going to a Christian-based college.
Right.
And I was going to a state college, That's not really something that's talked about at a state college. So I didn't really attend church during college, and this is when COVID hit. COVID hit March of my first year of college, and I moved back home because I was actually living with my dad's sister at the time, and I had already decided that I was not going to be attending Kent State the following year. I was moving back to Hardin County because that was where I was meant to live. I was meant to be in Hardin County. I thought I was meant to live in New York and Atlanta and all this stuff. Funny me. So
darn it, that Hardin County.
Yeah, I know. It just drew me back in. So I remember moving back, and obviously, churches weren't in session at this time. And so but this is when online, this is when the live started really getting involved. So we were watching every Sunday live. We were watching the live stream every single Sunday. We would sit down, we'd watch it together, everything. And this is where kind of one of my turning points came. And this is where it's going to sound weird. I, in some ways, consider COVID a blessing to me. And I know that sounds weird. Why do you think that COVID is a blessing?
No, I completely understand.
And if I would have never had COVID and I wouldn't have come home, I think I would have still suffered through college, and I would have put all 4 years into college, which is not something I hated college. I'm gonna be honest, hated it. I moved home, and my mom, I'll never forget, I was in my room and I was doing my college assignments because obviously, we were still online. So I was doing my college assignments, and my mom came in my room and she was like, "Do you even like this?" And I was like, "No, I hate it." And she said, "Okay, so what do you want to do? Because you're going to be a productive member of society." And I was like, "Okay,
no
obviously."
Option, Mara, no option.
She's like, "You're going to either get a job or you're going to figure out a trade that you want to do." I'm like, "Obviously." And I had always had this, I wanted to do hair ever since I was little. My dad told me no. So my dad's dad was a hairstylist. And my dad grew up in the hair industry, and he told me, he said, no, you're not doing it.
Which is really funny because of your dad's lack of hair.
I know, my dad is bald. And so it is so funny that my dad used to have hair longer than mine. And like when him and my mom met, like his hair was longer than mine.
I need to see these pictures.
Oh, I have pictures. I'll show you for sure. So my dad was like, no, you're not going to beauty school. Like he had told me this before I even graduated high school. Like that's not an option. Because he had watched, a lot of hairstylists you'll see, they do struggle. It's not, there's a lot of money to be made in hair. There's also a lot of loss to be had in hair. Mm-hmm. And my dad watched both sides of that. And he said, I don't want that for my child. Okay. So I remember telling my mom, I want to do hair, but dad won't let me. And she said, I'll take care of your dad. Look into getting in a program. Okay, cool. I remember I found the program I wanted to do. My mom took my dad on a walk, and she got him out of the house, and she said, listen, your daughter's not dropping out of college, but your daughter's not returning to college next semester. She's going to go to beauty school. And my dad just kind of looked at her like, what do you mean? And my dad, I remember him telling me, like, what's your plan with this? Because, like, you're not doing this if you don't have, like, a set plan. My parents are very big planners. You'll notice that theme. My parents are very hard workers. They always have been. And so my dad was like, what is your plan with this? And I was like, I'm going to do hair. I loved hair. I loved makeup. Like, I loved all that kind of stuff. I was a very girly girl, which is funny that I have a boy because I am such a girly girl through and through. And I think God was like, oh, no, you need to give her a boy.
You're like, it's killing me not to throw a bow on you.
It is. And thank gosh I have a niece because I put all the bows on her. But so I remember, and I started beauty school. And obviously COVID was still a thing when I was in beauty school. So I didn't get a lot of clients until I was close to graduating. And I started at a salon in town. And it was a very faith-centered salon, which was nice. And, all of the people in the salon at the time, a lot of them attended the church that we were attending. So I kind of started to go back to church more then. And this is where I kind of hit a really hard point in my life. And this is where Dallas and Dylan were probably like, girl, you need to get on track. I was bouncing between guys, like, faster than you can change underwear. Like, I couldn't find someone, but I wanted to settle down. I was like, I need to settle down. Like, I was 20, I think, and I was like, I need to settle down.
You're like, the time clock is ticking.
Yes, I was like, you would have thought that I was like 60. Like, I was like, I have to settle down now. And I was, talking to all these different guys. I was going on dates all the time, and I think part of it was because the salon I was working at, I was the only single person. Everyone was married. And I was like, I'm the youngest to start, and I'm not married. Like, I was having a hard time relating. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I want to get married. Like, I want this. And I've always known I was going to be, married and have kids. I always knew. And that's when, I went through probably, 2-3 years of this, I would say, before I met Dalton. And I think when I met Dalton, everyone was like, oh, okay, like, it's just another one, and we ended up lasting, and, Dallas's kids ended up loving Dalton. And your son, Retley, he's still, like,
he loves Dalton.
He would rather hang out with Dalton than me any day.
I think he'd rather hang out with Dalton than me. So.
I mean, it's how it goes. And so, meeting him was great. And I wish, we didn't really go to church much when we first got together. He wasn't raised in church at all. Like, they didn't go to church. And so we didn't attend much. And when we got engaged, we started attending more because I was like, we really need to figure out our faith with, all of this. And so we came back to New Hope, obviously, and we started, attending church and everything. And we would kind of go here and there. It wasn't consistent by any means. Like, it'd be like, okay, here's a weekend where neither of us have to work. Let's go. And, my husband works at Honda, so he works a lot of overtime. So there's Sundays that he still doesn't get to go to church every Sunday because there's mandated weekends that he has to work. And I just remember, like, we have to do this. Like, if we're going to get married, like, we have to do this. And it was kind of like neither of us were ready, but we were like, it was just what had to happen, I guess. That's how we felt. Mm-hmm. And then we got married. We continued to kind of come to church, and I kind of had a little misconception that happened, and it's partly my fault for this. I felt like kids weren't welcome at the time in the sanctuary. And at this time, I had my niece a lot because her parents work 12-hour shifts. And so every other weekend I would have my niece. And at the time I started watching her when she was 6 weeks old. So she was probably, just a couple months old at the time. And I remember them saying, like, we really encourage you to send them to the nursery. And I was like, I can't do that. This isn't my kid. I can't send her to the nursery. I'm responsible for her. I can't do this. And if anyone knows my niece, she's very, very attached to me. We have a great bond. She's less attached to me now that she's 2 and thinks she runs the world. But, but as a baby, I was close with her, and so I was like, I think we need to take a step back. We started attending a church that we had heard about through some mutual people, and my best friend was attending this church at the time, and she was having her daughter dedicated. And I was like, this is a perfect Sunday for us to go try this church out. We can be at the dedication and we can figure this out. We attended, and my husband loved it. He loved the sermon. And I was like, okay. So I think we found a church that, he likes, I like, my friends go here. It's great. We attended a couple months, and then some things happened with some friends and stuff, and I just didn't feel like I wanted to attend anymore. I felt like it was best that I, stepped away. And at this point, I don't think we attended church for a while. Like, here and there, I'd go with my mom if she'd text me and be like, hey, like, come to church. I'd be like, okay, like, and I'd go.
I remember your mom being like, I got her to church today.
I know.
Like, elbowing me.
Yes.
I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, like, I didn't go to church very much. And then we found out we were pregnant in February of last year. And I started coming a little towards the beginning of my pregnancy. And then towards the middle, I really started to come. And then towards the end, I was like, I really need to do this. Because how are you supposed to raise your kids to, like, foster a relationship with the Lord if you don't yourself? And so I felt like, and I knew that I wanted Bodhi to be, raised in the church. And I wanted him to, have that relationship and be strong in his faith. But if I'm not, I can't expect him to be. So it's kind of where my mind went. And I was like, I have to attend church. Like, there's no option here. And so I started going. Dalton was working a lot towards the end because, you're about to have a baby. Like, that's not cheap.
Yep. Yep.
So he was working a lot of overtime and stuff. And this is kind of where my faith really shifted, was during my birth. Okay, so this is kind of where, like, my birth story really plays a part in my faith journey. So all that stuff, kind of led up to this. And I was set to be induced on a Friday. And that Monday, my water broke in bed. And I remember waking my husband up, and I was like, hey, like, my water broke. And he was like, are you serious? Like, you're getting induced on Friday. What do you mean your water broke? And I was like, well, like, it can do that. Like, it
doesn't really have a schedule.
Yeah, I was like, he's ready to come. Like, it's going to happen. And I remember, like, it was the funniest thing. And I remember
I'm jealous because I always wanted a dramatic water break.
Oh.
Every morning I would stand up and, like, I knew I had to go to work. And I'd stand up like, break, water, break.
And do it.
And it wouldn't. I'm like, yeah.
And it was the weirdest thing because I literally was just laying in bed scrolling on TikTok. And I went to roll over to go, like, to sleep. And I just felt this pop. And I was like, what the heck? Did I just pee myself? Like, I was like, because at first it was just like a little dribble. And I was like, oh, I must have peed myself. Like, that's really awkward. And then I remember standing up because I was like, oh, I probably have to go to the bathroom. So I stood up and it literally just, like, gushed.
I'm jealous.
And my husband will joke and say that now we need to sell our house because my water broke in our bedroom. And so he told me that we were going to throw away the mattress and all this stuff. Like, he was really dramatic about it. I was like, dude, it's okay. Like, we're fine.
You're like, wait for this baby to come out and you'll see how gross things actually get.
We're fine. So I remember it was so cute, like, the way he was acting. I was, like, so slow about everything. I was like, oh, like, I'm, like, walking down the stairs, and I'm like, I guess we gotta go. And I'm, like, grabbing stuff. And he's like, we gotta go. We gotta get to the hospital because I was delivering an hour away. Like, I was delivering in Columbus. And so I remember he was like, we gotta get in the car.
But you also had high-risk pregnancy, too.
Very high risk. I have a brain condition that made it high risk. And then I also, towards probably my 3rd trimester, I got high blood pressure. So I was being monitored for preeclampsia and all that kind of stuff. And thank goodness it never amounted to that. I was on medications, everything to keep it under control. And I remember I had just got done texting my best friend too, because she was going to go to the hospital with us. And I just got done texting her, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to bed. And she's like, okay, I'm going to leave my ringer on just in case since you're so close. And I'm like, okay. I didn't think anything was going to happen. I called her, and she goes, did it happen? And I said, it did. And she said, I'm getting in the car. I was like, okay, she lives in Lima, so, like, she didn't even further drive than us. And I remember calling my mom, and I was like, she had gone to bed, like, an hour before this because she had texted me. And I remember calling her, and I was like, my water broke. And she's like, all right, let's do this. Like, we are on it. She was like, I'll meet you at the hospital. I was like, perfect. So we get down to the hospital or whatever, and I was progressing pretty well. You know, like, everything was going great. They got me into a room and everything. And I got my epidural very quickly because I wanted a no pain birth. Like, I hate being in pain.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And I'll admit, you moms that do it natural completely, you're superheroes.
Yeah,
nope.
Epidurals, all 3 of mine, no shame. Like,
yeah.
It was what it was.
Yes. And at first, my epidural was amazing. Like, instant. I was like, relief. I remember falling asleep, and I fell asleep on my right side, and the nurse never came in and rotated me. So my epidural quit working on my left side. So then I labored my entire labor with no epidural on my left side.
Oh.
And they were like, well, we can come in and replace it. And I was like, nope, it's fine. I'll deal with it. So I was like, it's not that bad yet. Mind you, I'm only like 5 centimeters, so it wasn't that bad.
You're like, it's fine. It's fine.
Towards the end, it sucked. And I was like, can we redose, please? Like, I think I had like 6 redoses because, like, I was just trying to go numb, like, as numb as I could.
Yep.
And I hit the 20-hour point of being in labor, like, since my water broke. And, you know, a lot of them say, like, at 24 hours, you need to have the baby or you risk infection. They didn't seem to be too worried about it with me. They said, you know, we're not too worried about it. You're progressing fine, you know. I was at like 9.5 at 20 hours. So they were like, we're going to start pushing probably in the next hour because you'll hit the 10 centimeters. Okay, great. And this is where things got rough. I pushed for 3 hours. And that's tiring. And my mom was with me and my husband. And God bless my husband. He hates everything medical. He is not good with that kind of stuff. And so he is like up by my head trying not to gag. Like, and he's trying so hard. And he was my washcloth person because he just like kept rotating the washcloths for
and
me.
And then you have my husband who was down. Down there was like, go push.
Oh, yeah, no. At one point he had to go to the bathroom and he literally walked by me and he walked with his back towards me to the bathroom because he couldn't do it. Which, it's fine, you know, whatever. And I remember the nurse telling me, like, your baby's not moving down. And I was like, okay. And she's like, you're pushing as hard as you can, and he's not moving down. And I was like, okay, what are our options here? I was like, because at this point, I'm avoiding a C-section. I was like, I'm not getting a C-section. It's not happening. They were like, we're not there yet. You know, we're going to try some other things. So they came in and they talked to me about using a vacuum to get him out. And I was like, I mean, is it going to, like, hurt him? And they were like, nope, it's totally safe. You know, we'll try it. Okay, so by this point, I didn't know this. If you have a vacuum, you get a whole NICU team in your room, plus like 4 doctors for yourself.
What?
Oh, it's insane because
I did not have that. Mila was vacuumed out.
Oh, I had a whole NICU team. I had like 4 doctors in there. I don't know if it's because I was high risk or not, but it was insane. My room filled, and I was like, I don't like this. Like, I'm like all out for everyone to see. I don't like this.
Nope, they vacuumed Mila out. I had none of that.
Oh gosh. Well, so they got the vacuum on him. They tried to get him out, and the vacuum popped off. And they were like, we can't, you know, we're not going to do this again. I'm like, okay. And actually what happened is he ended up being stuck under, like, my pelvic bone. And apparently, like, my pelvic bone's tilted, and we didn't know that. And so he couldn't get under it to get out. And I remember them looking at me, and they were like, we're taking you to a C-section. And I was like, no. And I was, like, bawling my eyes out. And I'm like, no, you're not. Like, I'm not doing it. And they were like, you don't have a choice. Like, this is what's best. We have to take you for a C-section. And I remember my husband looking at me, and I was like, are you going to go with me? And he just gave me the blankest stare. And he was like, he's like, do you want me to? And I was like, well, do you want to see your son be born? And he's like, so he, like, takes a minute, and he comes back to me, and he's like, honey, I don't think I can do it. He said, I think I'm going to pass out if I go in there. And he said, and that's not going to be good for either of us. He said, so why don't you have your mom go with you? I said, okay. And the doctor said, there's a chair right outside the OR doors. She said he can sit in that chair. Okay, cool. So my husband was like right there.
Right, yeah.
Like, but my mom was the one in the OR with me. And I remember they get me in the OR or whatever. They lay me down. And I don't know how, but somehow they were able to use my epidural for my spinal.
Oh.
And even with it not working on my left side, they got it to work on my left side.
Like, oh,
So I
now
was like,
you get it
cool.
to work.
Yeah, right now.
Now it works.
And so I remember I get in the OR, and obviously, like, I can't move myself onto the table, so, like, they have to move me. And they, like, strap you down. Like, you are strapped down, like, I don't know. It was the scariest, weirdest thing. I'm like, my arms are strapped down. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what is happening? They're straight out to the side. And the anesthesiologist was like, okay, we're going to give you some medicine, you know, so that you don't feel nauseous. I'm like, okay. Yeah, that medicine made me nauseous. I ended up getting sick, like, for, like, a few minutes straight. And I remember the doctor coming over, and it wasn't my OB, because my OB wasn't on call that night. So it was the on-call OB. And she came over, and she just starts rubbing my arm. And she was like, everything's going to be okay. She said, I'm going to take care of you. She was like, I understand you're anxious, and this isn't what you wanted, but, like, I'm here for you. And I was like, okay. And it kind of made me feel a little better. Like, she tried to, like, be personal with me instead of just, like, cutting me open. So they bring my mom in, and they start cutting me up. I didn't even know they were cutting me open, to be honest, because, like, obviously I can't feel anything.
You can't feel it anyway.
And I remember them saying, like, we're getting to the baby. And they went to pull him out. And I remember them, like, briefly showing me him over the curtain, and they really quickly took him away. And I remember looking at my mom, and I said, something's wrong. And this is where my mom had to lie to me, I found out later. And she said that this caused her to have a panic attack because she doesn't lie to me. She and all the doctors kept telling me my baby was okay, and he was not okay. Bodhi came out not breathing at all. They rushed him over to the warmer. They had to do CPR on him manually and put him on a CPAP because they couldn't get him to breathe. It was 5 minutes before they got him to breathe. And they say, you know, C-section babies come out a little stunned because they don't go through the whole process. So sometimes it takes them a little longer to cry, but this was like, it took a long time. And going back and seeing the pictures, so there was a nurse taking pictures of him being born. And if you look at the pictures, you can see how blue he is and how lifeless he looks when they took him out. And it just, like, breaks my heart. Like, I can't even look at those pictures because, like, it messes with me so bad. And I remember by this point, so when you have a C-section, you get very tired after the baby's taken out. I don't know if they gave me something to, like, kind of relax me a little more, but I got very tired, and I was, like, going in and out of, like, sleeping. And they started stitching me up, and I'll never forget the pain that I felt, like, up in my left side. Awful. Like, because, like, they're having to, like, rearrange everything and, like, put everything back, and I was like, this is awful. And, like, you actually, like, will start getting sick while they're, like, sewing you up. Worst thing ever. God bless my anesthesiologist because he sat there, he held the bag for me, and he, like, wiped my hair for me so that, like, I was okay. So they ended up bringing Bodhi over once they got him, like, everything was better. And I remember they, like, touched him to my face, and I kissed him. And then they said, do you want your mom to hold him? And I was like, sure. And this child was the most alert child I've ever met in my life. He didn't go to sleep for, like, 2 hours after he was born. Like, he was just looking around. I was like, what in the world? Like, my baby's broken already. And if you know my mom, she's a talker. Big talker. And he was, like, cooing at her. And she was like, oh, you talk like Gigi already. And I was like, oh, my gosh. And so, anyways, so, like, they finished up the surgery or whatever. They took my mom out because, like, towards the end, they kind of, like, have everyone leave. They moved me over to the bed, and they take me to recovery. Well, at this point, you can only have one person with you in the PACU for recovery. So my mom and my husband switched. My mom went to the lobby. My husband stayed with me. About an hour into recovery, they said, my mom texted my husband, and she said, hey, we're going to go home. You know, we've been here for 24 hours. We're going to go home. We're going to get some rest. You know, she seems to be doing great. The nurse was like, yep, that's fine, you know, everything. And at this point, they tried to sit me up, and I remember my blood pressure tanked. And they were like, lay her down, lay her down, lay her down. So they laid me back down. My blood pressure went back to normal. So, like, something, like, wasn't reacting right. So they had to come in and give me some medications for that, which is fine. And I remember, like, the second time I was kind of, like, sitting, like, halfway up. And I told the nurse, I was like, I feel really tired. And she was like, okay, you know, go to sleep. Okay. I closed my eyes, and the next thing I remember is Dalton said my blood pressure tanked to 33/14. And he saw it on the monitor, and all of a sudden, like, 5 doctors rushed in. And I had already had a small hemorrhage before this, and they thought they had it under control. And when they came back in, Dalton said I was hemorrhaging so bad. and they, started to try to get the hemorrhage going or whatever. Cardiology had to come in. They had to put like EKGs all over me, like all this stuff. And I remember waking back up, and all I remember is seeing a nurse putting another IV in my arm, and she had a blood bag, and I just started laughing. And I was like, am I dead?
You're like, what is
and
this
they were
life
like,
right now?
They were
What's
like,
happening?
oh, you're back. Like, we're so glad that you could join us. Like, they're like saying all this stuff. I'm like, oh, like, did something happen?
You're like, what did I miss?
I was like, I thought I just took a nap. Like, what are you talking about? And I remember I looked at Dalton, and I was like, what's happening? Because they had kind of like shoved him in a corner. And he was like, you're hemorrhaging. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, did you tell my parents? And he's like, not yet. I've kind of been with you. I was like, okay. I said, well, I think you should tell my parents. And so he goes and he calls my mom, and they had literally just gotten home. Like, literally just laid their heads down on their pillows. And he said, I'm losing her. You need to come back. And my parents literally, like, jumped up. My mom had no gas left in her car because my dad siphoned gas from his mower into my mom's car because they didn't have any gas left.
Man.
And my dad had left his truck down in Columbus. They had drove back home together because they were going to come back down the next day. So, like, my mom's car was it. They had, like, their big truck, but my dad was like, I'm not driving that to Columbus. Like,
Yeah.
So they came back down, and I remember I wanted my parents to know. I wanted my brother and my sister-in-law to know. And I wanted my best friend to know. And he called my best friend, and my best friend just knew something was wrong when the call came in. And she said, what is going on? And he told her, and she was like, I just remember I started crying, and I just started praying immediately because I didn't know what else to do. She was back home in Lima at this point. Like, she didn't know what to do. And I remember him telling my brother and my sister-in-law, and they were trying to keep him calm. And we were in a group chat. And when I go back and I read the messages, like, I apparently was texting them in this group chat, and I went back and read the messages, and I was like, what I was saying made no sense. Like, I'm like just texting. They just like completely ignored me in this group chat because I think they just knew that like I wasn't with it, and they were like, yeah, she's fine. Like, and so they're like trying to calm him down because they were working third shift at the time, and they kept telling him like, it's gonna be okay. She's in the best hands. It's great that she's there. They were like trying to calm him down, and ended up having the Jada device used on me, and I don't know if you've ever heard of that. So it's this new device for postpartum hemorrhaging, and it saved my life. So they put it in, and it makes your uterus contract down. Okay. Best thing ever. If you're gonna give birth, highly recommend asking your hospital if they have a Jada, just in case this happens. And I don't say any of this to scare a new mom by any means, but it's good to be aware because this was one of my biggest fears, and it came true.
Well, there's a lot of things, and I tell people this all the time. There's a lot of things I feel like as a mom, even as a third-time mom, that I had no idea.
Yes.
I didn't know I had options.
Yep.
I went with whatever they told me
to,
especially with Mila's labor and delivery. Yep. I could have done that so differently, and I've actually had a lot of people tell me that I could have sued the hospital for malpractice on so many things.
Yes.
But I didn't know, and you don't
know
automatically you trust the doctor, which I feel like, yes, we should trust our doctors, but also, like, it's okay to question.
Yes.
It's okay. It's okay to advocate for you and for your baby.
100%.
I didn't know these things. So it's really good, especially for first-time moms, to know that you can ask questions.
Yes.
You do have options.
Yes. And another thing I want to say, like, I had a couple nurses that I was not a fan of when I was actually in my room. You can request a new nurse.
I would have done that once too.
Yes.
We had a nurse with Mila. We called her the Nazi.
Yep. It's bad. Like, it's not, like, they are there to take care of you. Don't let them put you in a position where you feel like you can't be taken care of.
Yeah. I don't feel like she took my medical situation to the severity that it was.
Yes.
And she was making me, and this is my birth story. I'm not going to go into it, but just like she was making me get up and move and do things when I physically could not.
Yes.
And then she was yelling at me.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was like, I can't. Dylan's like, no, you can't. She's not refusing. This is the fact that she physically cannot.
Yeah.
Like, and see, I assumed that she was the only nurse available in the whole
I know.
world.
You do. And in the moment, you're like, oh, she's assigned to me. Like, I have to use this nurse, And eventually, I did get to leave the PACU. I was in the PACU for 8 hours. You're only ever supposed to be in the PACU for 2 hours after a C-section. But to me, it felt like 20 minutes. And I remember I sent Bodhi to the nursery because I remember like right before like I started to like kind of feel like out of it, I was like, can we just send him to the nursery?
And there's no shame in that either.
Don't ever let someone tell you that you can't send your baby to the nursery.
I sent all of my kids to the nursery so I could sleep.
Yep. You
I'm
just
like,
went through major.
I'm like, yeah.
A major event.
And so many moms feel guilty. They're like, I don't want to send my baby away. I just had.
I didn't either,
like,
but do it.
Like, it's really okay.
It's
They're
okay.
going to take care of your baby. And
Yes.
honestly, for me, my selling point was like, because my babies, I don't know if this is all babies, were really bad, just like gaggers when they were babies.
Yeah.
They would just start gagging and choking.
Oh gosh, yeah.
All the time. And I know like Reese had like a acid reflex thing. But so like I was like, I would much rather them watch her or them, you know, if
they
that
know what
were to
to do.
happen,
Yes.
rather than me sleeping and miss it.
Yes.
So no shame in sending your children to a nursery.
Not at all. And I was one of those that thought I was going to keep my baby in with me all the time until I ended up having a C-section. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, you can take him. And, you know, Dalton and I had no sleep in 24 hours. So we weren't going to be good parents if he was with us. Like, and it's okay to admit that, like, they need to be taken care of. And I actually ended up being taken back to the labor and delivery floor and put in a room because the high-risk floor was completely full. And I was not allowed to go straight to postpartum after everything that happened. They needed to keep an eye on me and stuff. And I remember a nurse coming in or whatever, and I asked them, like, how bad was it? And they said, you were the third worst hemorrhage that we have ever seen at Riverside Hospital. Man. And that's saying something, because if you know Riverside, it's huge.
Yeah.
And I lost 3 liters of blood. Which,
I remember getting these text messages, by the way.
Yes.
Also, a side note, because you would text me.
Yes.
When you were on your way to the hospital.
Yep.
Just as like a.
I was like, I need prayers. Like, yep.
And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, she's gonna have the baby.
Yep.
I'm so excited. And then like and then I remember being on the treadmill. And when I got the message, I don't even remember if it was the same day or if it was the next day. I cannot remember. I think it was the next day. You texted me in the morning. You were on your way to the hospital.
Yes.
You had Bodie. And then it was the next morning, I got a message from our pastor that said, like, Mara is not doing well in the hospital. Like, please pray for her.
Yes.
And also, I was almost offended because I was like, why am I getting this from my pastor?
Yeah, so
and not from Mandy or Mara. But also, like, I didn't know
no one knew the extent of it. Yeah.
And I remember walking on the treadmill and just, like, praying for you on the treadmill because I'm like, I'm like, trying not to be offended. Why am I just hearing about this? But also, I'm like, I was, like, you know, it was kind of like a little blur for me, too, because I was like, is she okay? Because with what I went through with Mila, and they're, like, telling me, like, it was almost, like, 10 times worse for you. And I'm like, because I hemorrhaged with Mila, but I was like, oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and at this point, I didn't know that my mom had told anyone that, like, to pray for me, but my parents were so scared. Because at this point, so by the time I was in the labor and delivery room, I had already been given, I think, 4 units of blood. And I had to stay in this room for 2 days, and when I tell you, I wanted to go home. And I remember they got me up, like, walking, and I thought I was going to die. Like, I literally thought I was going to collapse. Like, it hurt so bad to walk. And then eventually I got moved up to postpartum, and when I was there, they started, like, taking my labs a lot. And I remember I just, like, was constantly praying, like, please let this be the day that I get to go home, or please let me be okay. Like, I just want to live, you know, at this point. And they were taking my labs, and they were checking my hemoglobin, and my hemoglobin would not come up. Like, it was staying so low. They couldn't get it up. I ended up having a total of 6 units transfused. And I remember the one day our pastors came down, and they prayed with me and everything, and that was amazing. And it kind of changed my whole perspective that day. And I came home, and I couldn't even go back to my own house, and a lot of people don't know that. I had to live with my parents for 2 weeks. We live in a 2-story house, and all of our bedrooms and stuff are upstairs. And so I couldn't come home. You're not allowed to do stairs for 14 days after a C-section, they say. I don't know if everyone follows that. But so I actually ended up going to my parents, and my mom will tell you that she thinks that God had a hand in them building their new house and tearing down their old one, because they were able to let Dalton and I live with them for 2 weeks. And I don't think I would have survived had I not lived with my parents for 2 weeks, because the first week I was useless. I felt like an awful mother, and I went through a lot of guilt, and I still do. I felt like I wasn't there for Bodhi. My husband and my mom and my dad took care of my son for the first week of his life because I could not get up out of the chair. I was taking oxycodone, which that was a whole other thing. I literally fought the nurses and told them that I would not take it. I was only going to take ibuprofen and Tylenol. And they were like, my mom like forced me finally. She was like, take the medicine. She was like, you are in so much pain. This isn't worth it. And so, but when I would take that medication, it would knock me out. So like I was no help with my son. And of course I wanted to breastfeed so bad. Like it was so big for me. And I was getting no milk. And at this point I was like, just give him formula because I can't do anything. And there's no shame in having to formula feed your kids.
Nope.
None. People like to shame you for it, and I don't understand why. And I'll admit, I tried so hard to breastfeed. I tried, Bodhi would not latch. I tried, then I was like, okay, I'll exclusively pump. You know, I'll be an exclusive pumper. And I was getting nothing. And I'll never forget, Thanksgiving Day, my milk completely dried up, and I sobbed. Because I was like, I'm not able to feed him. And it sucked. And I was talking to so many lactation consultants and stuff, and they actually told me that they believe my pituitary gland shut down because of all of the traumatic events that happened. It just shut down, and I just couldn't produce milk because of it. And I just remember, like, that was my turning point of my faith. And I was like, this is, like, I got a second chance at life. Like, I'm not going to take it for granted. And that's when, once I was recovered and I had moved back home and stuff, we started coming to church every week. And we try to come every week. There's some weeks, if we have a rough night, we don't always make it because if Bodhi stays up all night, I'm a sleeper and it's not great. And no one wants to be around me, trust me. So we're not perfect. And I don't think any Christian is perfect. And so, we might not make it every week, but we do come to church now, and we are very, we try to be very involved in stuff. And, we go to the women's Bible study every month, and, my husband keeps my son at home for that hour so that I can get out of the house because, I am with him 24/7. Like I am with him constantly. And just Monday, I had the biggest breakdown because I was so touched out and my child had been crying nonstop, and my husband has to go to work. He doesn't have a choice. And I remember my husband came home and I said, I feel like an awful mother, but please take him. I said, I can't do this right now. And I just had a breakdown. And, it was to the point that this kid wouldn't even let me shower without me being, like, him being in the same room. And I know you've been there. Yes. So it was hard. And I'll admit, motherhood is hard, but it helps.
Hard. And so many moms have that exact same guilt. Yes. I had that guilt.
Yep.
Especially with Mila.
Yes.
Because not only was she rough labor and delivery, not only did I have really bad postpartum, not only did she have then medical issues herself because of the labor and delivery.
Yes.
But also, as Mila specifically has grown up, her love language is physical touch.
Yes.
And I think that has a lot to do with her as a person and how she was labored and delivered. And I feel like a bad mom a lot of times. And Reese has even started doing this where she says she feels bad, but like Mila just has to touch you.
Yep.
All the time. And I'm like, Mila, I'm touched out for the day.
And you just need a minute.
And Reese will do it too. And Reese is like, I feel bad, but
yes,
I don't want to hug right now.
Nope.
So, but it's you feel bad for doing that because they just want your love, but also at the same time, like, I am touched out.
Yes.
I'm overstimulated.
You're like, I need a break.
I need a minute.
Yeah. And
like,
it's
a real thing.
Yeah. I think one of the hardest things for Dalton and I to come to terms with is I always thought I would have a bunch of kids. Like, I thought I'd have at least 2 or 3. And, we've both come to terms that we're most likely done after everything I went through. Dalton said that it's not worth ever possibly losing me again. He said, I can't do that. And I'm not willing to leave my son without a mother. So, you kind of hit that stage where you're like, this is what's best for us. Dalton and I are both technically only children as well. So, we're very familiar with the only child life. And I have a bunch of other kids to, love on. And, I think another hard thing is people constantly telling me, like, you're going to change your mind. Well, then when you hear my story, people are like, oh. And I think that, and some people don't always think before they say things. And, I'm guilty of it too. I think we all are. Sometimes we say some things, but especially to new moms, you just kind of have to tread lightly. Like, you don't know what they went through. And there for a while, I didn't want to tell anyone what happened, and, it felt kind of embarrassing, I guess, in a way. Like, I didn't get to have that experience that everyone else has, and I felt very robbed. And I'm not gonna lie, I was angry with God about it. Like, I was angry. And I got through it because I'm like, listen, you kind of did save my life there. So, like, I kind of
okay, I kind of see it now.
Yeah, I kind of, like, gotta forgive you. But, like, I was mad. Like, I had that experience taken away from me. And, I felt robbed, of my birth. I felt robbed of my recovery. I felt robbed of my first couple weeks with my kid,
And your future too, because now you're like, yes. I don't know if I want more kids.
Yes, so. And obviously, there's other ways. There's adoption. We've got surrogacy. We've got all that kind of stuff. And I have some amazing friends who have talked to me about potentially helping us out. And and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But it's just right now we're just focusing on Bodhi. We've got him. He's everything to us, and it's great. And we're having some other issues like happening in our family medical wise, not personally with us, but with some very close family members of ours. And that's kind of taking a toll on us all as well, because we're very, very close. And it's hard, and it was really hard to hear. It's obviously not a secret, but my sister-in-law has breast cancer, and that was very hard to hear at 3 weeks postpartum. We found out, and she's like one of my best friends. Like, we're very, very close. And so to hear that at, just 3 weeks postpartum, that like your best friend who's only 28 has breast cancer, like, why? So that was like another reason where I was very angry with God. And I was like, okay, first, my birth. Now you're doing this to one of my best friends and my family member. Why? Like, you just sit there and you're like, why me? And then you get to thinking, like, he gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. And you just have to keep, I just keep trying to remind myself of that. And thankfully, she's managing it well. We're getting through it. But it's still hard. I mean, everyone's like, well, you're not the one dealing with it. No, I'm not the one that has to live with it. But I'm the one I'm there for her,
There's a grief with it, too.
Yes.
Even if it's not you, there's still,
yes.
Watching my grandparents go through dementia and Alzheimer's,
it's
and,
awful.
It wasn't me, but it's still, there's a part of your life that you, again,
yes.
feel a little robbed
yes.
when, looking at my grandparents, and they had no idea who I was. And
yes.
I'm like,
you're like, this
why?
is awful.
Like, why does this happen? And there's a lot of, I just wanted to touch on this because you said it, and I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
Feeling
Yes.
And so I think a lot of people, especially if they don't believe in God, because how could a loving God do something so awful?
My husband struggles with that a lot. He says, if God is, who we're supposed to serve and all this, then why does he do this? He struggles, when it happened to me, and then with my sister-in-law, he struggles, and he's like, why? We're faithful to him, we go to church, we do all the things, and yet this is how we're, rewarded. That's kind of how he feels. And we had to have a talk about it. And I'm like, I totally get it. I was angry too. I was like, but it's working through the anger. It's working through it, and realizing that there's maybe a bigger plan in the long run. And, once we kind of put that into perspective, he was like, oh, okay, kind of thing. But it's definitely hard.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not easy. Anybody, I think, I know our pastor touches on this a lot. Like, sometimes people think Christians just have the best of days because we believe in God. No, life is still hard and awful sometimes for us too. But it's how we deal with it. It's how we cope. I don't know if I want to use the word cope, but it's how we see the bigger picture of things. Yeah, this might be bad, but like, there are more things. Like I said the other day when I was being very selfish in my own prayer, like, there is more things out there.
Yep.
And I think sometimes we get so self-centered, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but like, we just get self-focused. We're just who we are.
Yeah.
Of like, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? And like, we always just have to look at the long-term picture. There's a lot of things in my life that if God didn't put them in my life, and at the time, and I was like, this sucks. Why does this happen?
Yes.
But if it had not happened, I would not be where I am today.
Well, and you
whatsoever.
I know you've gone through it too with friendships. It's like, why was this person that I thought was going to be in my life for everything taken away from me? But then you gotta look, and he puts someone even better for you in your life. Like, had I not gone through a lot of things that I went through, I wouldn't have my best friend Abby, and and my other best friend Hannah. Like, we're very close, and I thank God every day for how close I am with them, and they're very into their faith too. And sometimes I'm like, wow. So he took those people that didn't have that great of faith, took them out of my life, and then gave me these two women who help me all the time, and they're mothers too, they're wives, and so like, they get it, and I think sometimes in your seasons of life too, like, he removes people that are no longer for you in those seasons. Right. So like, when Dalton and I got married, I lost a lot of friends, I'm not gonna lie. Not because like they didn't like him or anything, but we were in a different season of life. We were settling down. We were ready to, start a family and stuff. And we started our family pretty quickly. I mean, and a lot of people are just, if they're not in that season of life with you, you tend to drift apart. Because, if you still have a friend, that's, say, in the bar scene, and you're not in that scene anymore, you notice, oh, okay, we're going to drift apart. Dalton and I would rather spend a night in any day than go out to a bar.
Your priorities change.
Yeah, and especially now that we have Bodhi, we'd rather spend a night with our son than go out and feel awful the next day. I mean, like, it's just how we are, and, it happens. And you kind of have to look at it and be like, okay, I see you working.
Yep.
I might not understand it in the moment, but, like, I understand it in the long run.
Yep. And
it took me a while to realize that, like, okay, like, I see where he's going with this, because at first I was like, why? Like, why? Like, I felt like every friend I had was being taken from me all the time. Like, I would finally get in a good friendship and it'd be taken away from me. And I'll admit, I have had 2 best friends since I was in high school, and we have been best friends for over a decade now. And we're very close. And, and I've noticed that God's never taken them away from me. So clearly, like, we're meant to be in each other's lives. And I'll admit it's hard right now because one of them just moved clear across the country, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? Like, we went to school together all through school. We always went to school together, and then we got really close, and we've taken vacations together. Like, we've gone places together. We've been there through, 2 of us are married. One of us obviously I have a baby now, and it's just crazy to, like, look back and be like, wow, we were those teenagers in cornfields, or those teenagers that were messing around in Walmart after the basketball game, and now you're like, one of us lives in California, 2 of us still live here. Like, it's crazy how it all works out, I guess.
Yep. Nope. And I always say I suck at friendships. Friendships come and go for me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and I've never really been able to figure out why, but I think God just strategically just moves people in and out, even if it's just, if I have to touch their lives in a way, or they have to touch my lives in a way, they have to teach me a quick lesson and humble me real quick, because I've had some friendships that have done that, and I was like, oh, I thought this about myself, but then I watched myself in this situation, and I was wrong, so that humbled me too. And man, he's good like that. Yeah. He does that, but I do think a lot of people do struggle with the anger part of asking God, and I always tell people, I'm like, there's a reason, whether you want to see it or not.
You'll see it one day. Yeah. You'll see it.
Might not be immediately, but it'll be there.
Give it a year. Give it a couple years. You'll see something happen. It might not be tomorrow, and it might not be a month from now, but you'll see it eventually. You know, it took me a while to see some things, especially with friendships. I was like, you know, it's been, almost 2 years since I've talked to some people, and I'm like, wow, I thought, you know, they were going to be the aunts to my children and stuff. Yep. And you're like, and they're not. And you're like, wow. And and some people you're like, I never imagined that we would be friends, you know? So it's crazy, I guess.
Yep. And then like bringing it back even to like with your faith and how watching your faith grow. Because I've been watching you, you know, whether on social media or just in personal life. You and I have been texting a lot lately.
Oh, yeah.
Which I love that because I'm like, I felt like you and I drifted apart over a season or two. But again, we were in different seasons of life. Yeah. I was well into a million businesses and trying to raise my family, and you were just starting to like get married and all that. So we were just in different seasons. But watching you come back to your faith, and it's been, again, you don't always see it. And I was just reading on the woman with the issue of blood, and I made this post last night on Facebook, like your issue, your struggle. So like maybe your struggle with Bodhi and you felt hopeless and you felt, you know, you said useless and all of these things, but like maybe it's that issue, maybe it's that situation that's going to make you have such bold faith because you know that he is the only hope. Yeah. And you honestly just have to come back to him. And I was thinking about that in my own life. Like, I feel like I have a few things that I particularly have struggled with for many, many years. And having to just finally be at that place where you're like, I have no hope in anything that I do. Yeah. So here it is, God. Like, you gotta take it. And being in your situation where, like, there was nothing physically that you could do in that hospital room for you nor for Bodhi. Nope. And, you know, while we do have doctors, we put our hope in doctors, but ultimately we know who we have to put our hope in the most. And so I think when we were chatting and you were like, your faith definitely changed after having Bodhi. Yep, and then I read that last night, which coincidentally, like, and then we were here today, and I was like, that's so cool, because she's going to talk about, like, how her labor and delivery, and then all of that with, you know, really stepping more into her faith. And and like I said, I think also just being a parent in general, you definitely see that unconditional love. You definitely see it in a whole different aspect when you become a parent, and I feel like it just leads us back closer and closer to God.
It does, And I honestly, I was that daughter that kind of used to get annoyed when my mom would, like, send me Bible verses as a teenager. I was like, why are you sending me this? Like, I'm not, you know, I thought it was uncool, I guess you could say. Like, it's uncool to do that. And now I'm kind of like, I'm the one sending them, and I'm like, wait a second, like, you know. And I've been very blessed to, you know, grow up with parents that are strong in their faith and stuff, and they've never, like, you know, questioned me for, you know, stepping back or anything like that. I mean, they're like, you gotta do what you gotta do. You know, that's how they are. And
you have to do your own journey. Yeah. And this comes back into, like, conviction and, you know, being condemned. Yeah. You have to figure it out for yourself. Yep. It's between you and Jesus. It's key. And nobody can press it on you. No. But, it's funny you say that about your mom, because I also, when Dylan and I started dating, I would ride with his mom back and forth to, like, wrestling meets and soccer games and all this. And she would always play, you know, Christian worship music. Yeah. And I wasn't into my faith at that time. Yeah. And I'm just, like, texting him. I'm like, listen, your mom's got to change the radio station. Yes. I can't keep doing this. Yeah. Like, and I felt bad because I love my mother-in-law. But I was like, I am so tired of listening to Christian worship music all the time.
I felt the same with my parents.
And now I am that mom where if you go through my phone, I have maybe 3 songs that aren't, I deleted all of them. Yeah. I was like, if it's not worship, if it's not praising the Lord, I don't want it. Yeah. And so now it's funny. I told my mother-in-law this. I was like, I see where you were going with this now. I see what it means to be a mom, and just to want to be able to put the good things in your kids' life and fill them with the word, even if it is just the song on the car rides. Yep. 100%. Reese knows all my songs now. She'll sit there and listen and sing. I'm like, how do you know the song? She's like, you literally listen to it, like, every day. And I was like, oh.
Come on, Mom.
And I already see it. Like, and she knows a lot of songs. Yeah. And I'm like, you know the words to this one too? She's like, yeah, you play these at home. Oh, yeah. And I'm like, like, it's really important how, like, we do things in our daily life. Yeah. For our kids to pick up. Like, your mom, even if just sending you Bible scriptures, even if at the time you're like, okay.
Yeah, I'm like, why, Mom? Like, can you know, I was that teenager that was always like, seriously, Mom? Like, come on, you know? And now I'm like, oh, okay, maybe she didn't know what she was talking about. Like, let's not tell her that, you know? But, you know, we're not going to admit that, but,
she'll
you know.
watch this and cry.
Yeah, I know, she will. But she will. She's an emotional one. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy, things that happen. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
Nope, I think that's
No?
it. Yeah.
I love that you came and talked to. I feel like we touched on a lot of good things. We touched on like so many things that that's why I was like, what are you going to talk about? Because I want to be prepared, but also like I want to be able to go with the flow.
Yes, that's why I like bullet points too. I was like, I'm just going to like bullet point it so I make sure I hit everything, but like I don't want to go too into detail that I'm like reading a script. Yeah.
And that's how I feel on my phone. And we'll get that intro eventually.
Yeah, you got it.
But right now we just read off the thing.
Yeah.
For now. I'm not good at memorizing, so.
Oh, that's fine. Who cares?
I said somebody messaged me the other day. She's like, I know you say you ramble. Just keep rambling. I like it. I love the ramble on your podcast. Just keep rambling. Yes. I was like, okay, well, I guess even if I'm not reading off the script and I ramble, then they like that too.
Yeah.
Being real with people.
Yes, being real is where it's at.
Is the best thing. I don't want to read off a script, but I also want to make sure that I'm giving you personal things. So
exactly.
So.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks
I appreciate
for
you
me.
sharing because I know that's a lot to share.
Yeah.
Especially not only just with somebody personal, but putting this out for anybody that could find it.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate you doing this and being my very first guest.
Oh yes, I loved it.
I was so excited. As soon as I did, I was like, I know who my very first guest has to be. I was like, I have to message Mara right away.
Yes.
And let her know. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
And as always, we're going to close out with a prayer.
Yeah.
That's fine with you?
Yep, that's good.
Perfect. Unless you're driving, I ask that you would close your eyes with us for a minute. Like I said, I always want to leave the door open, to open that door today between you and God if you have not been in prayer yet today, because I feel like it's important to have prayer every day. I know sometimes we get so busy that we just don't always stop to pray. So I want this to always be the opportunity for you to have that open door with God. So unless you're driving, go ahead, close your eyes, go ahead and bow your heads. God, we thank you so much for having Mara on the podcast today. God, we thank you for giving her the words and the bravery and the courage to speak her story, God, because we know that testimony is so strong and that it can really change and move lives. God, we pray that Mara's story not only can just be a really good reminder for her and for myself of how good you are, but a reminder for all of those listening. And if anybody else is going through those struggles, God, we just ask that you continue to comfort them, love them, put your hands on them. God, I know that whatever they're struggling with, if they have any anger towards you or they're just questioning maybe why right now, that you give them even just the softest touch, that you're there and that there will be a reason. God, we pray for mothers who are in struggling seasons when things just feel like too much and, mother guilt is awful, God, but we just ask that you cover all moms because they are amazing. And God, we just want them to know how special they are. God, we thank you for this opportunity, and we pray that you bring us all back to the next podcast episode. And we love you. We praise you. We give you the glory every single day. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.